I'm going to say the same thing over again. Yeah, ideally, wouldn't it be wonderful to have our families together and meet like this, and maybe someday that could potentially happen with possibilities. She has 3 children living here in Utah now, and she's had 5 missionaries from her family, and Ingeborg has been an absolute inspiration to me over my life, to see how she's so quickly accepted the church and the gospel almost immediately, and it's been with her and changed her direction throughout her whole life and the life of many, many people. So I've asked her to tell a little bit about her conversion, because I don't remember all the details, and I've asked her to include the embarrassing parts to me. So here we go.
Well, I was in Groningen, and I had just been through an experience at school that made me feel like the broken heart and the contrite spirit. And I had grown very close to Christ. And when I was walking in Groningen on the streets one day, I saw this board that said something, 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 and then Jesus Christ really big, and then something, 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 which then turned out to be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I stopped because immediately in me it said, anything I can learn more about Jesus Christ, I want to know. And there was Elder Lovelace, and I thought, he was teaching, he had these big, scary eyes, and he had glasses that were very thick, so his eyes looked very big and scary as he was standing there, because they were the flip charts. And it was a scary thing for the missionaries to stand there on the street by themselves and teach on flip charts. And there was nobody standing there with him listening. And I felt sorry, so I said, I'm going to stop here and listen to what he has to say. And I must have asked him 3 times, so but then what church are you from? We're from the Kerk van Jezus Christus van de Heiligen der Laatste Dagen. I said, yeah, but what church is that? Is it Catholic? Is it Protestant? And he would repeat again. And then later I met another missionary, which was Elder Smart, and then Elder Free. They were all on the street, and I thought, this is a strange cult, because they are obviously able to choose their name. This elder wanted to be free, so he was Elder Free, and Elder Lovelace felt maybe he needed more love, so he chose the name Lovelace, and then Elder Smart wanted to be more smart. Anyway, but then there was Elder Bennett, so that didn't fit. Anyway, long story short, I made an appointment for them to come to the house. And I remember the very first time they came, I had met them when I had just come out of the movies with a friend of my brother's. So they thought I was married. And when they came to the house where I was living, which was a room in Holland, when you're a student, you room somewhere, they realized I was single. And so my next lessons were all at the family's house. But at that time, they were asking me, where I was from and so on. And I remember clearly still today that I was telling them about my background in details, which is really weird because I'd never done that before. But the Lord wanted me to do that because my great-grandmother is African. And so it affected the blood, as I call it, the black blood. the fact that I had, African heritage at that, and especially in those years, was very important. And the missionaries went home and called President Dalebout and said, we have a golden contact. She wants to know about the church, but she has this African inheritance. What do we do? And President Dalebout, and I teased him about that later, he said, drop her. Drop her unless she wants to know more, then continue to teach her. Well, I happened to wanted to know more, so they continued teaching me. And then, like I said, they knew I was single, so I got my lessons at somebody else's house. And when I was having a lesson at the house of Hans and Tineke Zurhaar. And Hans and Tineke had been fasting that day because I was Elder Free and Elder Bennett or Madsen were going to teach me about the consequences, basically, of having African blood. And they had been fasting, and the elders came. They taught me something. I don't know what they taught me that night. And then they get up and left. And I remember Hans Zerhard getting up and going to the door and saying, like, hold on, wait a minute. You're supposed to teach her about, And they were just talking back and forth at the and then the elders left. And Hans came in and said, they're going to come back because they have to teach you some more. But they want to go get a book first. So then they came back, and I had no clue what was going on, but they had a book. And obviously I realized afterwards that they were scared to death to teach me about it because it might, change my mind about everything. And so they sat down with this book. It was Elder Joseph Fielding Smith. And like I said, the one with the beard, was it F. Smith or Fielding Smith?
Can't remember.
Anyway, and they read what he had said about the people in the pre-existence and so on, and not getting the priesthood. And I thought, wait a minute, this is discrimination. And I looked at Hans, he was sitting there, Hans Zerhard, and he went, whoa, wait a minute, let me explain you. And they had been fasting all day. So I don't remember exactly what he said, but as he spoke, it just took whatever I felt of discrimination or so, it just took it away. It was just very simple. I thought, oh, yeah, okay, I understand that. And I think it was nice for you guys, because you're going to be shaking.
Hans, by the way, is it a bishopric or a branch back then? He was a counselor, and so he came with us to the lesson, or we came to his house, I think.
To his house.
And that's where we were giving the lessons, yes.
And a few days later, I had this beautiful vision where the Lord showed me that it's all the same, we're all going to the same place, some just have to take a detour. And it was very clear to me what it was all about. And then within a month of meeting the missionaries, I was baptized. And it was fast because I needed a crash course. God knew that a year after that, because I was baptized in October, and the year after, I got my patriarchal blessing that said I had to go back to Curacao, where the Lord had a mission for me. And a month later, I was gone. So within a year time, I needed to learn everything I could learn about the church and how it functioned. And I was aware, especially later, that during that time, I received like a crash course, meeting people, going to things, asking to speak at a conference where normally people that have been a member for a long time. But they asked me because God wanted me to learn fast. And then at the end of that year, I went back to Curacao, where there was no church. And that was not easy. And I remember one day, being very frustrated. I was reading in the scriptures, and it said something about sacrifice. And I said to God, all you do is asking me to sacrifice. I'm not happy about this. And I learned that the most important thing above love, a step above love, is sacrifice and obedience. But sacrifice is so important. But God blessed me so much because I was able to travel a lot in those years, becoming Miss Curacao, traveling a lot and being able to go to church outside of the island. And I remember being in New York, and I would go at 9 o'clock to one group session and stay for the next one and stay for the next one, just being the whole day in church, just filling that sponge, with whatever I could. And long story short, now we have a lot of people in the church in Curacao, and I thought it would never happen. But when I went back 2 years ago for the dedication of Elder Suarez, It's actually a rededication because many years ago the island was baptized.
That was 2019, I think, was it?
Yeah.
And he recognized Sister Zielinski really
Yeah, he did his
in
job.
his speech, and it was in the church news of some sort, and that's where I discovered it on the internet.
Yes.
And
Yes, he did his homework well because they had asked me to speak about the first years, and I told them about Yvonne Andersen, the other lady that was mentioned. She was in a hospital next to me, and I was, talking to her about the church, and she was one of those people that asked more and wanted to know more and wanted to be baptized, and the husband wouldn't let her. And then I was taking the missionaries that had been teaching her to the airport. They were going to leave. And there was no such plane was scheduled. There was no plane at 2 o'clock. There was a plane at 7 o'clock, which was really weird because they had a ticket for that time. And so I took him back and I called Yvonne. I said, I'm coming to your house. I know why this is happening. Get your husband ready. And I went there, and I don't know where it was not me, believe me. I went in there, and I was determined to talk to the husband, and I sat him down on a chair, and I told him, listen, this and this and this is happening. And this and this and this is why this is happening, and your wife needs to be baptized by these elders before they leave. And he said, okay. Just like that. Okay. And so we went to somebody's swimming pool, and I rushed home because I had been in Holland with family, and my sister had been a nun. This is interesting, a Catholic nun. And when I slept at her house, she gave me some pajamas that were from the nuns that they slept in, and it was a white outfit that came to the knees. And when I left, she said, oh, I don't use it, just take it with you. And normally, I wouldn't have, but for some reason I took it. So when Yvonne got baptized, I had the perfect baptismal dress. And Yvonne is very little. So that sister's nun's pajama fit her all the way down to her ankles.
oh my goodness.
And so I told that story that day, and everybody was laughing because it was funny. But that was that was an interesting thing. And Elder Suarez, and Yvonne also spoke after, but Elder Suarez knew, he had studied everything about us, and he was speaking, and he knew about my background and what I did. And I was impressed that he had prepared so well for that moment, that speech. Anyway, I think that's enough for today.
And I just have one more thing to say. I remember for us, we had to memorize the discussions. We didn't have anything memorized for things like this. And so my recollection, I can barely remember everything, but I can remember that we finally brought up the subject, and it was like she said, okay, I understand. Well, what's next? And it's like, it doesn't make any difference. In her mind, it was a set course, and whatever it was, and I never forgot that part. The other part that I did forget, and maybe you can still tell that part, is I didn't remember about your mother coming up. Can you tell her about that?
That
about
was
tithing?
interesting.
So I think maybe the last discussion we had was for tithing or
Tithing.
interview, and this is what happened.
Yes, in Holland, you become an adult when you're 21. It probably has changed over the last 40 years, but they discovered that I was 20. And so they couldn't baptize me without permission of a family, mother or father. Now, interesting enough, my mother, living in Curacao, had two things that really hit her. One, she was studying the scriptures, and there was something about the bride preparing to go to the groom in David. And another thing, there was a water that she saw, a water that was inviting her, and she didn't understand, but she knew she had to go to Holland. So she booked a flight, and she was there the week of my baptism. And when they said, we need your mother or a parent to sign, She was there.
And I was there also, was I there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
But she was there before the last lesson, and she was in with the last lesson
Okay.
that was about tithing. And when they talked about giving 10%, I was afraid of what my mother would say, because I thought, she's the one that sends me money every month, and for me to say that I'm going to pay tithing about it, I was kind of like hesitant. And before I could say anything, here's my mother sitting in Hans and Tineke Zerhaar's house. And she speaks up and she says, oh yeah, she can pay tithing. I sent her money every month, so she said she has enough to pay tithing of it. And like I said, God took away everything that was an obstacle. It just had to be. There was no other way. But he knew that I was supposed to go back to Curacao. And when I was baptized and received the Holy Ghost, I was told by Brother de Jonge, I was told that God chooses the first of a country, the first of a family, and the first of a nation, or something like that, these three firsts. And that I was the first on the island and had a spiritual obligation, if I want to call it that, a mission, like I was told in my patriarchal blessing, to serve the Lord there. And I was especially thinking back of it now, I was very privileged to do that. Especially when I went back for the dedication and I saw so many people. The whole church was full of people. And there was a church. We used to meet in a house. There was a church full of people. And it was wonderful, wonderful. Beautiful memories. And you were all part of that.
That was my honor, and I'm humbled. And all because I chose to serve out the 2.5 years I was called to. We were given the choice to go home early since they changed the rule. The missions were going to be 2 years. Had I not done that, there was an amazing amount of baptisms that I had during that time, and just prior, I think in Brussels. But this one was one that had legs. I mean, we went out to the world with all of your testimony. It fills the earth today still, as she has a Facebook following, and she knows 4 or 5 languages.
Well, everybody on the island speaks 4, because our native language is Papiamento, which is an official language, but it's a language that grew over the years. And everybody speaks Dutch, because the island is officially Dutch. It's Curacao, Aruba, Bonaire. And then we are so close to Venezuela that everybody speaks Spanish. And we have Venevisión, which is a television from Venezuela. And everybody speaks English, because in 5th and 6th grade, they start teaching you English and Spanish, both. Mm. And all our movies that on our television come from the United States. So we have everything in English, and Children's Hour, Betty Boop, and Popoy the Sailor Man. We call him Popoy. And so everybody speaks 4. And then my father was German, so in the house we spoke German with my father. Oh. And then I married an Italian, so I had to brush up on my Italian really fast. I studied French in school, so the languages just go on, and then I taught sign language to the people in Curacao, the children, and it's just things that develop. Everybody has a talent, and I don't have many talents. I play a little bit of every instrument, or a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I don't go, one big talent, but I think languages maybe would be the only one. That's impressive. And, yeah, it's a beautiful story when you think back so many years ago. It's 54 years ago, this month, coming October.
October 2nd?
October 2nd.
So 2nd, okay.
Yeah,
I'll remember that day. I wouldn't have known it 3 weeks ago. But this has been such a blessing. I'm so glad that we had our reunion, and then everything came together where when Inga heard about this, she said, I'm getting a ticket from Florida to come here, regardless of what else, I'm going to be there. and she is here today, and what a blessing this is. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll remain friends forever.
Forever. Because when we came to the United States, your parents, Kathy and Gary, they invited us over, and you were all little, but we were all having dinner at the table. And one thing I've always appreciated, and it's probably Kathy, every year I would get a Christmas card. And I could see the family grow, you know, the card with all the kids around it. Yeah. And then one year it stopped because I never sent Christmas cards back. So,
And we lost where you were.
yeah, and I had moved, and who knows where.
And originally, we went to Holland on for a trip with, just to see where Gary was on his mission, and we went looking for you.
Oh,
And
really?
we found out you had moved to Provo.
That's why we found you.
And we came home and invited you and your family to dinner.
Go look for me in
We
Holland.
could have saved the trip to Holland and just come to Provo.
Oh, that's funny. That's
So,
funny.
Well, thank you very much, and I think everybody has to move on and do other things for their day.
Yeah,
but we
but I
have a
thank
luncheon
you.
today,
Yeah.
and that's going to
Thank
be
you
a
so